The poetry of exile is also about the transplantation of protest. It's about allowing the resistance to keep living by spreading to places where it will not be extinguished.
I know that you belong to a whole assortment of identities, and I was wondering what made you gravitate so strongly toward the Lebanese part of your identity, but if you can also tell me about the other lineages that you belong to.
Yeah, so I'm born of a Syrian father and a Jewish mother who is of kind of unknown origin. And then I was adopted into a British and Iraqi and Lebanese household.
Okay.
Now my teta, who raised me also until I was around 14, she was originally from Palestine and then from Lebanon. So she was identified as Lebanese.
What was passed down to you from your father and your teta?
Well, it's interesting because I think when you're diaspora, so much of what's passed down it feels more like myth, you know, like you inherit a lot of stories that exist in the past tense. So I remember some of the most standout stories was of them crossing the desert from Iraq when the king was assassinated, and my teta had sewn their belongings into their clothes, and she took her children across the desert alone and came to Lebanon. Lebanon was always this place of where you arrived to, where it was there for my family. Time and time again, Lebanon was there for my family. When I was adopted, Lebanon adopted me, and then later in life, Lebanon adopted me again. You know, so it's always been this place somehow of like refuge and return. In order for me to understand Lebanon as a part of me, I had to sew myself back into Lebanon's present tense, because my father saw Lebanon as something that was gone. He said he spoke about the time before, but the time before, like in the 50s when he'd show us pictures of it in his golden age,
yeah.
exactly, in his golden age. Oh, Lebanon will never be like this again. Lebanon is gone. This is not Lebanon now. I will never go back. This is not my Lebanon. There was a point when I had to make my story with Lebanon nothing to do with my father anymore. And there's a certain time where you have to decide that actually your heritage is also yours, it's encompassed in your body, and that it's your right to go out and collect it.
A lot of people use this with relation to the term Lebanon, my Lebanon, his Lebanon, her Lebanon, etc.
We each have that. And I wonder whether we feel it more with Lebanon or if that could be measured in other countries, but we cling to something that feels finite because we have inherited stories of destruction and loss and grief. I inherited the grief of Lebanon through my father, and so with that sense of grief comes a sense of the finite. And so therefore we try and put our hand on something because we consistently feel it slipping away.
So why did you remain?
To be honest, I don't think there was never an option for me to leave. It didn't cross my mind, actually. I was specifically organising and distributing with the migrant women, single mother communities, and I felt that if I walk away, that if I turn back, if I go back to England, that, like, what am I going to do? Just start not answering my phone? Like I don't know. It wasn't Lebanon then. It wasn't about Lebanon so much as it was just about human responsibility and communal responsibility to one another.
Why do we have to make such a great sacrifice for something that we want to belong to, especially in the case of a country like Lebanon?
Looking back now 3 years later, I can say it's because what we were seeking was of so much more value than what we thought we could lose. And sometimes what we thought we could lose was, you know, health. It could be damage to our bodies. But I think we were on this journey that was so much more important. And if you and I had, you know, each our own, turned around and retreated, I think the loss would have been so much greater for us.
I ask myself this sometimes with regards to where I'm going to go next, because I have been spending less and less time here, what it would take for me to finally no longer want to remain. And I guess I wanted to extend that question to you. What would it take?
I think everyone I love would have to leave. Yeah, my hand would have to be forced somehow, and it would be based on people, where they go and who they be. But I don't think you or I would ever leave.
Tethered in some way, even if it is just one or 2 months a year, or
1 or 2 months a year, or once every 2 years, or once again when you're 70, you know? Or you carry it in you. I'm not sure that countries are always contained within borders. You've got to remember so much of the Lebanese population lives outside the country, more than lives in the country. So is a country contained in the made-up borders of land, or is a country contained in our bodies, and therefore countries can walk on 2 feet wherever we take them?
Well, yeah, and also not just in bodies, but in the configuration of bodies as well.
I think being mixed heritage, being diaspora, we have, at least the way that I view it, come to see my parents as my countries and my countries as my parents. You can never truly leave them, even if you cut them off. You know, even if I leave Lebanon, even if I have no choice and I cannot come back, it still parented me somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Naima Yazbek is a Brazilian belly dancer with her parents' roots in Lebanon. While her family never returned, Naima felt compelled to visit in search of her roots.
This is why I love Lebanon. I just learn from the good and the bad, and the opportunities I had here, even with all the fighting, the difficulties are amazing. Where else could I have this, you know?